Good morning, watch nerds. So you've just had a glimpse at my 12 watches I sold since August 2023. And guess what? I bought 12 to replace them. All of which have now been reviewed. In actual fact, just about every watch in my collection, other than my golf watch, has now been reviewed. So feel free to have a look at my back catalogue if you're interested in any of them. Warning though, I would like to think my videos have improved since I started doing them. So some of the earlier ones may be a bit rough around the edges. So why did I ship out the ones that have gone? Well, there were a few reasons. Some I just never bonded with, some I fell out of love with, and some simply had to be replaced for no other reason than I needed to make space for something incoming, if that makes any sense. You see, I've got 32 watches, 2 of which that live in the safe, and the rest live in my 30-slot watch box. Now I've got a policy of sell one and buy one, and that helps me stop running out of money. Now for your interest, I've got 10 divers, 3 pilot watches, 3 field watches, 3 GMT watches, 3 dress watches, 7 sports watches, a golf watch and my investment Rolex. Starting with my dive watches, I will very briefly take you through each one, but don't be alarmed, it really will be brief. Now first up is a relatively new purchase, my Van Banner Parking Master 2. Even when these were new they weren't particularly expensive, but they're very well spec'd. I bought this mint condition used one for only £153. I just love the fact it's a little bit different and that yellow dial really pops. I think this may well be my holiday watch. I'd be amazed if anybody watching doesn't know what this watch is. The Helm Komodo is one of Helm's more compact watches at 40mm, although it's still got a depth of 15mm. Helm are commonly known for being over-engineered, and these are one of the few divers that are actually ISO rated. Believe it or not, there's a 2-year waiting list for one of these, although used ones commonly come up on eBay, as this one did. This is the Reverie Diver, a compact 40mm watch with a Miyota 9000 series movement inside. Reverie are Singapore-based microband, as are quite a few microbands these days. Now I'm sure you've already fallen in love with that stunning Galoosh dial. I've considered selling this a few times, but then I keep changing my mind. We have Gary over at I Like Watches to thank for this one. He and his friend James designed this watch and had it made. It may not be perfect, but I described it as possibly being the best value for money automatic dive watch available. It's got a 38mm case, but in my opinion it wears a little bit larger. I forgot to mention, it's the J&G Exciton 2. When I first bought this San Martin vintage diver, I struggled to bond with it. After a few weeks I got to realise how good it actually is and how well it wears. This is my only watch with a YM55A movement inside it, which is actually an Orient in the house calibre. I prefer this movement to the NH35 as the positional variance is a little bit better and is thus just a little bit more accurate. The more common colour is black, but this is the burnt orange option. This is my Christopher Ward Super Compressor, the second Christopher Ward watch I ever bought. I believe it's got one of the most attractive dials ever put on the watch, and it's hard for me to stop looking at it when it's on the wrist. Although it's got a 41mm case, it actually wears more like a 39. Now this was the first genuine super compressor watch made for many years, which means there's a pressure ring on the back, which apparently helps keep the water out. Another fairly recent purchase, and a real bargain no less. Father's is an Italian microbrand, and this is the Horizon, but the watch is actually made in Switzerland. I think this dial and the scallop bezel combination is stunning, and this is certainly one of my favourite watches. Now I still can't figure out though whether the script on this dial is wonky or it's an optical illusion. What do you think? The Perrin Nero Rogue X is a watch I've had a few years now. Perrin are Romanian based, but like the Father's watch I showed you a minute ago, it's made in Switzerland. The dial colour apparently takes inspiration from a famous river in Romania, and the logo's got something to do with Dracula's teeth. What really makes this watch though, is that steel insert in the bezel and the ceramic sides. The Coast Pacific Explorer is my most recent dive watch, and isn't it a stunner? Now Coast are, or were, a Danish microband, and the owner took 3 years from design to get this watch to market. It came in several iterations, but this is obviously the dive watch version, and it's got a brushed copper dial. Now, although not particularly cheap, considering the specification, which includes a Swiss automatic movement, it actually represents very good value for money. Now, they were originally $599, but I picked up an unused but second-hand one for less than £400. This is the last of my divers. I'm one of two Marn watches in my collection, and yes, Marn is the correct pronunciation. Marn are a Swedish brand owned by two Dutch guys who take inspiration from New York. However, the watches are made in Switzerland. It's obviously a vintage type diver, and it's got a case size of just 38mm, making it very compact and very comfortable to wear. I would think most of you know what this watch is, and it's the first of my three field watches, although it could be said it's actually a mountaineering watch, especially with the built-in compass bezel. It's the Seiko Alpinist, and this has got the mountain glacier dial. Like most Seikos, they have got the design spot on, but like most Seikos, the specification and the value for money isn't really that great. All that put to one side, it looks fantastic, and it wears really well. The second of my three field watches is a Dryden Heartlander. Dryden, by the way, are a USA-based microband, and they've got a very good reputation. When I reviewed this, I described it as possibly being the only watch you need. It's rugged and water enough to be used for sports or in the field, and dressy enough to be worn in the office or at a King's Garden party. It's beautifully put together, and it's one of the most comfortable watches I own. My final field watch is the St. Martin SN0131, but it could be argued it's a sports watch rather than a field watch. I'm still not totally sure. Even though this is one of the cheapest watches in my collection, it's actually one of my favourites, and in my opinion, it's got the best bracelet and clasp. The finishing on this watch is incredible, and I just love that black waffle dial. Like my other St. Martin watches, it's an original design, although there are elements of it that take inspiration from something else. This is a Yema Flygraph, a watch I'll never part with for personal reasons. What makes it a pilot's watch, I'm not really sure. It's fantastically put together and finished, and the in-house movement is very accurate. Just as well, because Yema's customer service isn't meant to be very good, but that's the French for you, I suppose. This is the last of my three St. Martin watches, and the cheapest watch in my collection. I picked this used mint one up for just £100, although I don't think new ones cost an awful lot more. Now, it's loosely based on a vintage Longines Heritage pilot watch, and isn't it just lovely with that off-white patinaed dial? The strap, by the way, I put on it, but the original one's pretty good as well. Inside is the good old NH35. My last pilot watch, and one every watch enthusiast should own, especially as they're cheap as chips, is the Seagull 1963. Inside is the Seagull ST19 movement. This is just about the only affordable mechanical chronograph movement on the market. And have a look how pretty it is. It's got a patina dial, blue minute and hour hands, and a red second hand. That combination really shouldn't work, but for some strange reason, it just does. I believe this is quite rare. It's the Steinhardt Marine 38. 38 standing for the case size, of course. Most Steinhardt watches are well-made clomages, but as far as I know, this is the original design. I particularly like the stark white enamel dial, and what makes this watch special is its simplicity. Inside is the ETA 2824, and after I had to regulate it, it now runs very accurately. It originally came on a brown crop strap, but I think it looks great on this blue ostrich one, which matches the blue hands. Now we move on to the GMT watches, and if you don't love this Batavi Cosmopolite, you either need your head tested or removed. It's a GMT diver, so it can live in either drawer, and it has done. Batavi are a Dutch-made microband, and this has got a Swiss soprod movement inside. It goes without saying that this watch's highlight is the beautiful sapphire bezel insert, which does actually come in different colours. Well, what do you think of this gorgeous Christopher Ward C63 GMT? On this lovely tied strap. Like all Christopher Ward watches, it's incredibly well made, and this light catcher's case, in my opinion, is the nicest case available. Now, powering the watch is the good old Sellita SW330, a Labore grade GMT movement. This is my other Marm watch, the Greenwich GMT. Inside it's a Swisstech S24-45, which I know little about, other than it's a high beat movement with a GMT facility and it's very accurate. Now what drew me to this watch is its 38mm compact case, large indices and its beautiful black waffle dial. I don't normally like rubber straps much, but for some strange reason it just works really well on this watch. Well, we're on the home stretch now, you'll be pleased to know. Now this is one of my 2 luxury branded watches, but this one gets worn on a rotational basis along with the rest of my collection. It's the Tudor Black Bay 36. Some men may not fancy the idea of wearing a 36mm watch, but I think it wears a little bit larger than that. Tudor, as you probably know, are a Rolex owned brand, so needless to say this is a very well made Swiss watch. This has got a high grade ETA oscillator movement inside it, but Tudor refer to it as the T600. I'll be controversial though, other than the excellent movement, the San Martin homage version of this actually has a similar build and finish, so worth bearing that in mind. The Second Hour Mandala, another watch I can't imagine ever selling. Second Hour, an Australian based microbrand, and the quality and finish of this watch is something to behold. Now I simply love the case and the bracelet, which by the way have some anti-scratch treatment applied. This is a salmon dial version, but it does come in several different colours, and I believe there's now a second edition of this watch. Now whilst this is a 40mm watch, it actually wears more like a 38. This is the Atticus Meteora with its silver linen dial. Atticus are a sister company to NTH and are USA based. This has got a 38mm case, my Iota 9000 series movement inside it. Now from top to bottom, Atticus watches are very well made, and I just love this one. And now for something completely different, and it also happens to be my watch of the day, the Unison Orbital. Now although a bit of an off the wall design, it's actually very well put together. It's a shame though that whilst the lume looks brilliant when it's charged, it doesn't actually last very long. Anyway, the specifications on this watch and the finish are excellent. And unlike most of the off the wall watches you see, this one's very reasonably priced. I realise it's very much a Marmite timepiece though. This is the Eco Nutra Avro, one of the more long-standing watches in my collection. Eco Nutra are an Italian-based microband, but are produced in Switzerland, and this one's got the Swiss Solita SW200 movement inside it. It's got a 39mm case, and I think the dial aesthetics are fantastic. I paid extra and bought the stainless steel bracelet for it, but later decided it looked better on this seatbelt 2-piece strap. Well, in my opinion anyway. The Relio Solstice. Oh, the Relio Solstice. Just look at this beautiful crimson dial with those wedged indices. Now unusually, this has got a cutout section on the sides, which are bead blasted, but this may be something you love or you hate. It's got an H-link bracelet that is very, very well made, and to be honest, this is just one hell of a watch. This is now the only quartz watch in my collection, although believe it or not, I've got nothing against quartz watches. Technically this is overpriced, as it's got a mineral crystal and the Seiko quartz movement inside it is far from expensive. However, the watch's dial is just outstanding. It originally came on a Milanese bracelet, but I prefer it on this rally type leather strap. By the way, it's the Yema Rallygraph. So on to my 3 dress watches. Well, it's quite difficult to distinguish a dressy sports watch from a sporty dress watch. I've got a feeling this may be another keeper. I've said that a few times before. This is the Orient Star AU0004B. Orient, as you may know, are part of the same company as Seiko, but in my opinion represent better value for money. The Orient Star range is a bit more upmarket, as they get a sapphire crystal, better case finishing, better bracelets, and not to mention better movements. This one even has a power reserve meter. The F6 N43 movement in this is ridiculously accurate, and it's also got a 50-hour power reserve. The last of my Christopher Ward watches is the C65 Vintage. It's a classic looking watch that I picked up a few years ago for a bargain price. The strap it came on was a nice camel colour, but I thought I'd brighten it up a bit with something a bit more colourful. Here we have the Axios Tribune. Axios are a sister company to Zelos, but I tend to prefer their designs. This has got the copper dial, although there are a few different colours. I replaced the very nice leather strap it came on with this Harris tweed version, which I think looks really good. It's a 38mm watch and it's got a Myota 9039 movement inside it. Like all Axios and Zelos watches, these are very well put together. Last but not least is my Rolex investment watch, the Rolex Oyster Perpetual 36mm. Hands up, I bought this watch in the hope it would go up in value, but since Mr. Putin invaded the Ukraine, nothing much has risen in value, apart from the price of oil and gas of course. Now purely from a parts aspect, Rolex watches are horribly overpriced. But when handling this, you can see how beautifully put together it is. And its in-house 3230 automatic movement only gains 1 second every 3 days. As well as that, it's constructed of 904L stainless steel from their own mine no less, and the indices are made of 22 karat white gold. Now I don't often wear this because I'm afraid of scratching it, but it really is a lovely bit of kit. That's about it folks. I hope you haven't fallen asleep and I hope you like my current collection, which will no doubt change by the time I do my State of the Collection 5 video. So that brings me to the end. If you've enjoyed it, please click on the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, leave your comments below and enjoy the rest of your day.